Okay, I want you to try something for me right now. Wherever you are, maybe you're driving, maybe you're folding laundry, just look around, pick a random object, and say a sentence about it out loud. Don't overthink it.
I'll play along. The microphone stand is slightly crooked.
Perfect.
Ah.
Now, let's unpack what just happened there. You didn't open a manual, you didn't, calculate a trajectory. You just opened your mouth, made some vibrating noises with your throat, and somehow this very specific, complex image moved from your brain into mine.
We do this thousands of times a day. We call it language.
Yeah.
But the source material we are covering today argues that we are, well, completely wrong about what language actually is.
It really does pull the rug out from under you. Usually when we talk about language, we think of it as a cultural artifact, right?
Yeah.
Like I speak English because I grew up where people speak English.
Yeah, it's just a tool for communicating, like a handshake or a bow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, we're going completely under the hood. We're doing a deep dive into Chapter 3 of A Minimalist Program for Linguistic Theory. And I have to warn you, this is not a light beach read.
No, it's pretty heavy theoretical linguistics. But the core argument is fascinating. Language isn't just a social tool, it's a biological organ.
Right. The text treats the language faculty, that specific chunk of your brain for syntax and grammar, as a piece of biological machinery.
Just like your liver or your visual cortex, it's part of the natural world.
But here's the hook that grabbed me immediately. The text says, this biological machine has a property called discrete infinity. Now that sounds less like biology and more like, I don't know, quantum physics.
It does, and that's really the first clue in our mystery today. Discrete infinity basically means you have a bucket of finite parts, a limited number of sounds your mouth can make, a limited dictionary of words.
But you can combine those finite parts to create an infinite number of sentences.
Exactly.
So technically, I could say a sentence right now that has never been spoken in the history of the human species, and you would understand it perfectly.
Precisely. You can keep adding clauses forever.
Yeah.
The cat sat on the mat, which was red, which was bought by John, who lives in Ohio.
Who hates pizza? You could just go on and on.
Infinitely. And the text points out that this is weird.
Why is it weird?
Because biology is usually messy. It's limited. Your heart can't beat infinitely fast. Your eyes can't see infinite colors. But language, it has this mathematical infinite capacity.
It feels more like something you'd find in the inorganic world.
That's it. Like mathematics or physics, not something inside a squishy biological brain.
So we've got this machine in our heads that acts more like a computer than a kidney.
Yeah.
And our mission for this deep dive is to understand the minimalist shift. The idea that maybe language isn't a messy bag of thousands of rules, but a perfect economical system.
That is the core hypothesis.
Yeah.
For a long time, linguists thought language was incredibly complex. The Minimalist Program asks, what if it's not? What if it's actually the optimal solution to a design problem? What if it's perfect?
Let's get into that, because the old way of thinking is definitely how I learned grammar in school, the red pen approach.
Oh, absolutely.
You have a rule for asking a question. You have a rule for making a sentence passive. It felt like memorizing a massive rule book.
And early generative grammar, the scientific study of this, actually worked that way too. It assumed there were what we call construction particular rules.
So like a specific neural circuit just for forming a passive sentence in English.
Exactly, like a specific button on a control panel just for the ball was kicked to the boy.
Right.
But the text explains that this view has been totally replaced by the principles and parameters approach, or P&P, and this is a radical break. Instead of thousands of specific rules, the theory suggests the brain has a fixed system of principles.
Invariant. Hardwired into every human brain at birth. This is universal grammar.
Yes, so every baby born, whether in Tokyo, Toronto, or Timbuktu, comes with the same factory settings.
The same hardware. But obviously we don't all speak the same language.
And that's where the parameters come in. Think of parameters like a bank of switches, not an infinite number of them, just a finite set.
I like this visual. It's like setting up a new smartphone.
That's a great analogy. When a child learns a language, they aren't learning complex rules from scratch. They are just flipping these switches based on what they hear.
So switch A goes on for English, off for Japanese. Switch B goes up for French.
Down for German, exactly. The operating system is the same for everyone. The settings are just different.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. If we just have these general principles and these switches, what happens to those rules I learned in school? What happens to the passive voice?
This is one of the most mind-bending takeaways. The passive voice, it doesn't actually exist.
Wait, hold on. I just used a passive sentence a minute ago. The ball was kicked.
Mm-hmm.
That exists. I said it.
You produce a sentence that looks like what we call passive voice, but the text calls these things taxonomic artifacts.
Taxonomic artifacts. That sounds like something you'd find in a museum basement.
It basically means an illusion of classification. Let's use an analogy. Think of a kaleidoscope. You look through it, you turn the tube, and you see this beautiful, complex, six-pointed star.
Okay, yeah.
And you point and say, oh, look, there's a star design inside. But if you crack open the kaleidoscope, are you going to find a little star-shaped gear?
No. You're going to find some mirrors and some loose, colorful beads.
Exactly. The star is just what happens when the beads interact with the mirrors. There is no star mechanism. In the same way, there is no passive voice rule in your brain.
It's just what the simple, universal principles create when they interact with my parameter settings.
It's the pattern the beads make. Bingo.
That's kind of unsettling.
Yeah.
It means the labels we put on language nouns, verbs, clauses might just be us describing the pattern, not the machine itself.
And once you realize the rules are illusions, you can start asking the real minimalist question. If we strip away all this baggage, what is the bare minimum that language actually needs to do?
The text uses a phrase I highlighted because it sounded very important. Virtual conceptual necessity.
A classic Chomsky phrase.
Which I think just translates to, what can't we live without?
Correct. If you're designing a language organ from scratch, what must it have? Well, it has to connect to the outside world. The text says language is embedded in performance systems.
Right. A language trapped in a jar isn't useful.
Yeah.
And it identifies two main systems it talks to.
First, we have the articulatory-perceptual system, AP, that's the body, the mouth, the tongue, the ears, the machinery of sound.
Okay, so we need to get the language out, step one.
And second, the conceptual-intentional system, CI, that's the mind. Thinking, meaning, planning. That's the why behind the speech.
So language is basically the bridge, the negotiator between the mouth and the mind.
Exactly. So by virtual conceptual necessity, language must have interface levels that speak to these two systems. It needs a level that translates to the mouth. We call that phonetic form, or PF.
And it needs a level that translates to the mind logical form, or LF.
And the Minimalist Program is basically saying...
That's it. That's the whole ball game.
Yes. And you have to understand, in linguistics, this is controversial. Previous theories had all sorts of middleman levels, things called deep structure and surface structure.
Like rest stops on the highway between sound and meaning.
And minimalism says, prove to me we need them. The hypothesis is that a particularly simple design for language would only have the interface levels. Everything else is excess fat.
Which brings us to economy. The text talks about language being non-redundant, satisfying these interface conditions in the optimal way. Reading this, I felt like I was reading about a computer algorithm, not biology.
It is a very computational view. The text argues that the language faculty operates on principles of economy.
Does that just mean it's lazy?
In a way, yes. It means it's efficient. The brain's grammar machine always takes the shortest path to connect a sound with a meaning. It doesn't take detours.
But the text also points out that this is weird for biology. Nature usually doesn't work like that.
It's incredibly weird. Think about the human body. It's a mess.
My lower back can confirm that.
Exactly. Evolution is a tinkerer, not an engineer. It just patches things together. That's why we have wisdom teeth that don't fit and backs that hurt because we stood up too fast, evolutionarily speaking. Biological systems are redundant and clumsy.
They just need to work well enough to keep you alive?
Right. But Chomsky is suggesting language isn't like that. It shows unexpected perfection. It looks more like something you'd find in the inorganic world.
Like the structure of a snowflake. That's the image he uses.
Yeah, or the laws of physics, or crystal. It implies that language might be a perfect solution to a design problem.
So inside our methy, biological monkey brain, there's this perfect crystalline diamond of a system generating our thoughts. That's wild.
It really changes how you view human thought, doesn't it?
Okay, let's look at how this machine actually runs. We've got the interfaces, sound, PF, and meaning, LF. How do we get there? The text describes a computational system.
It starts with the lexicon. This is just your list of items, your words, your prefixes, suffixes, your bucket of Lego bricks.
Okay, I've got my bricks.
The system picks items from the lexicon and starts computing, building a structure. The goal is to create a pair of sound, meaning.
And here's where the text uses some very dramatic terminology that I love. It talks about derivations that crash or converge.
It sounds like a computer program failing, right?
It does. I pictured a blue screen of death in my brain. So what makes a sentence crash?
Okay, so the system builds a sentence. When it's done, it presents the result to the interfaces. It holds up the sound part to the articulatory system and says, here's the phonetic form, can you say this?
And it holds up the meaning part to the conceptual system and says, here's the logical form. Does this make sense?
Independent inspection. Exactly. Now, if the articulatory system says, I have no idea how to pronounce that, or the conceptual system says this is structural gibberish,
Yes.
then
Crash. It fails.
it crashes. But if both interfaces say, yes, I can use this, then the derivation converges. You have a successful linguistic expression.
What I found fascinating is that the system doesn't check its work as it goes. It waits until the very end.
Right. That's part of that economy. If you stop to check your map every 5 feet, you're slow. The perfect system just runs the computation and only cares about the result.
Okay, so let's recap. We have this perfect, efficient, universal machine. It's crystalline, it's optimal, but I have to play devil's advocate here. I look around the world and I see thousands of different languages.
The Tower of Babel problem.
Exactly. If the machine is the same, why is the output so different? Why is Japanese grammar so different from English?
This is the question of differences. If the core is invariant, where does variety come from? The text proposes a narrow conjecture. It suggests that the variation between languages is actually incredibly shallow.
Shallow. I don't know. Learning a second language feels pretty deep to me.
It feels hard, yeah. But structurally, the text argues variation is confined to just 2 places. First, the PF component, the sound.
Okay, obviously, water sounds different than ill or bizu.
Right, but that's just external packaging.
Okay.
The second place is the lexicon, specifically something called Saussurean arbitrariness.
That's a mouthful. Break that down for us.
It's a fancy term for a simple idea. The fact that the sound dog connects the concept of a furry barking animal is random. It's arbitrary.
So in Spanish, it's perro. In French, it's chien. Just a random label.
Exactly. So you have to learn the labels.
Yeah.
But, and this is the huge claim, what about the syntax? The machinery that builds the sentences?
The logic engine, the part that puts the Legos together.
The text suggests that the computational system and the LF component, the meaning structure, might be identical for every human being.
Wait, so you're saying that deep down, the way a Japanese speaker structures a thought and the way I structure a thought is exactly the same?
That is the narrow conjecture. We all think in the exact same structural format. The syntax of our thoughts is invariant. The only differences are the sounds we use to push those thoughts out and the word labels we attach.
That is a profound idea. It means the barrier between languages is kind of an illusion. It's just surface noise.
That's the idea. The text says variation in the syntax or meaning component would be problematic. Think about it. If your brain ran on Mac OS and mine ran on Windows, how could we ever translate anything?
You'd be incompatible.
The fact that we can learn other languages suggests the underlying operating system is the same.
This really changes how I think about babies learning to speak. We usually say, he's learning to talk.
But really, he's just tuning in. The machine is fully built, the lights are on, the baby just needs to hear enough data to flip those few parameter switches and learn the vocabulary.
It's less like building a skyscraper and more like downloading the local map pack for a GPS that's already installed.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it explains why children learn language so fast, despite what we call the poverty of the stimulus.
Poverty of the stimulus.
It just means the data kids get is bad. Adults mumble, they speak in broken sentences, but the kid still learns perfect grammar. How? Because they aren't building the rules from the data. They are just using the data to wake up the rules that are already in their head.
That is such a cool concept. So let's zoom out. We started with language as this massive, complex list of rules. And through the Minimalist Program, we've arrived at something completely different.
We have. We've moved to a vision of a sleek biological supercomputer, a machine that is surprisingly perfect, optimal. It takes a dictionary and a computation, follows the path of least resistance, and creates a structure that perfectly fits the needs of sound and meaning.
It's elegant. But the text does end with a bit of a warning, doesn't it?
No, it's not all victory laps. It notes that the empirical burden is huge.
Empirical burden. Sounds heavy.
It is. If you claim the rules are simple, you have a lot of explaining to do, because language looks complex. If you say there is no rule for passive voice, then you have to work really hard to prove how simple principles interact to look like one.
Right. It's easier to just say, here's the rule. It's much harder to say, here is the deep physics that creates the illusion of a rule.
Exactly. It's high risk, high reward. But the payoff is a much deeper understanding of what we are.
It really is. It takes something we take for granted and shows us that beneath the surface there's this crystal-like perfection humming away in our neurons, a testament to the perfect design of the human mind.
And if I can leave you with one final thought, the text focuses heavily on these performance systems.
The interfaces, right? The AP and CI, the mouth and the mind.
And we've established that the internal language faculty, the machine itself, might be perfect, optimal, flawless.
Right. A diamond.
But we all know that actual communication is, well, it's often a mess. We misunderstand each other, we stumble over our words.
Oh, absolutely. My communication feels far from perfect most days. I trip over my words. I say way too much.
So here's the question. If the internal generator is perfect, where does the error come from?
It's not the engine. It's the driver.
Or the transmission. Perhaps the flaw isn't in language itself. Perhaps it lies in the performance systems, the clumsy biological tools we use to access that perfect internal world. We have a perfect thought generator trapped inside an imperfect delivery system.
That is something I am definitely going to be thinking about the next time I struggle to get a sentence out.
Yeah.
I'm not broken. My interface is just lagging.
Blame the hardware.
Exactly. Well, thank you all for listening to this deep dive into the Minimalist Program. It's heavy stuff, but man, does it change how you see the world.
It certainly does.
See you next time.